Welcome to a new podcast designed to dig a little deeper into the regenerative world. My name is Richard Tufton, and I've spent a career in the meat industry looking at ways to improve it. Starting a little over 20 years ago from a grassroots level, I learned by doing all the various different jobs, from helping raise the animal to the slaughter and butchery, and then getting the steaks onto the supermarket shelves, butcher shops, displays, and of course chefs' kitchens and restaurants. After the success of 6 Inches of Soil, the documentary, I got together with my friends Claire Mackenzie, who is the producer, and Colin Ramsey, the director, and we agreed that a podcast would be a great forum to continue the conversation. One of the big things to come off the back of this film is the wonderful community of people willing to share their experiences. Over the course of the series, we hope to lift the lid on supply chains and help answer questions like, what next? If I care about this, how do I get involved? How do I make a difference? We want to theme this series grounded with truth and traceability. This episode is themed around beef. For this debut, I got questions from my friends around the world who wanted answers and used this recording to put them to the experts. We'd love to hear your questions, your suggestions, and that will help us curate future episodes. But for now, please enjoy Series 1, Episode 1 of 6 Inches of Soil, the podcast. Welcome to the King George IV pub in Chiswick. We are celebrating the launch of 6 Inches of Soil, the book, How to Heal Our Soils, Ourselves and Our Communities Through Regenerative Farming, the book that sits alongside the already very successful documentary. Go see it if you haven't. And to equally celebrate the book From Dirt to Soil, our family's journey into regenerative agriculture. And I'm lucky enough to be joined around this table by the whole beef supply chain, from farmer all the way through to restaurateurs. So to start off with, I thought we'd just quickly go around the table and introduce who you are, what your name is, and how you're involved.
Cool. Yes, I'm Ben Thomas. I'm one of the 3 main characters in the film 6 Inches of Soil. I have 2 farming operations in Cornwall. One I run with my wife Claudie. We fatten native breed cattle on a 100% pasture system, kept outside all year round, and then that beef is marketed to direct to consumer or via premium online butchers. And then my day job, I manage a herd of pedigree belted Galloways for Natural England conservation graze across Gosmore and then down in Queens.
Cool, thank you, Ben.
I'm Claire. I'm actually not in the meat supply chain, but I think I'm the storyteller of 6 Inches of Soil. I'm the producer of the film, and I'm here today with our crew. We've been launching our book.
My name's Gabe Brown, and I'm a rancher from Bismarck, North Dakota. Just happened to get on the wrong plane, and here I ended up.
I'm Jacob Sumner. I'm on the restaurant side of the business, running our Chipotle restaurants in the UK, France, and Germany.
I'm Chris Hogg, and I work in a family business in the butchery side, so dealing with abattoirs, along with farmers, and supplying restaurants and hotels in London.
Great, well, thank you all for joining us today, especially on a bank holiday, for giving up your precious time. So what I've done is I've reached out to some of my friends in the industry, both here in the UK and across in the USA, and I've got a few questions. And so let's go through some of them right now. So the first one, somebody wrote in, a Dr. A. Williams from Mississippi has a question for you, Gabe, which is, what do you perceive to be the biggest challenge with regenerative grazing here in the UK?
Yeah, biggest challenge is lack of understanding, because ranchers cannot implement what they do not know. And unfortunately, these time-tested ecological principles of adaptive grazing are not being taught today. So often there's a mindset, well, this is how Dad did it and Granddad did it. This is the way we have to do it. Well, the way that is being currently done, unfortunately, has been degrading to the resource. And there's no doubt about that. I say it all the time. I have the good fortune, I'm on hundreds of farms and ranches all over the world every year, and I've never ever been on a single one, including my own, that's not degraded. We're all farming, ranching, degraded resources. So how we change that starts with education. We need to educate ranchers as to these ecological principles and how in so doing they can lower their cost of production, thus increasing their profitability while providing a more nutrient-dense product in a way that's ecologically sustainable.
Okay, that's really, really interesting stuff and very topical. Ben, I'm going to come to you now. So I've got a question from a friend of mine who lives in East Texas. She's called Christine Martin, and she wanted to know from you: is the direct to consumer a viable model? Is keeping sales local viable, and is the local infrastructure in place to support all of that?
It's quite tricky for us on our farm. Well, I guess I'll speak for ourselves. It takes a lot of time marketing and then selling this produce direct to consumer. So I think it's a brilliant thing to do, to have your product that you're producing on farm, to be able to taste it yourself, to know how good, what it actually is like, and then to build those relationships with consumers. So it's a brilliant thing to do. But the time-wise element of it is quite consuming, and I guess it leads to the next point. Down in Cornwall, the next part of the question, down in Cornwall is not one of the most affluent areas of the country here in England, and perhaps the spare money that people have to spend isn't there. Like, we struggle to get the premium that perhaps the beef, or where the price of it should be for it to us to be worth our while, worth our time to do so. We struggle to make that. So it's really tricky locally. When we extend ourselves nationally and sell into areas like London, people are just more than happy to pay whatever. They almost want to pay more for it, because then they think, they're getting a better quality product. And so it is really tricky locally. We do sell a lot of beef locally because we do want, we believe in what we're doing on our farm and how it's regenerating our soils and biodiversity on the farm, and we want that impact to be felt locally and those local people to enjoy it as well. But so we do sell it locally, but at a bit of a reduced rate. So yeah, it's really tricky. What was the third part?
So the third part was just asking about the infrastructure. I mean, for example, how simple or challenging was it to find somewhere to send your cattle to turn them from a living animal into a steak ready for someone's freezer and griddle pan?
So I know we're very fortunate. Our local small family-run abattoir is 20 minutes away, which is brilliant for us. And it's 20 minutes away. There's capacity there. My granddad actually helped set them up, so kind of knew back many years ago, but kind of had a bit of a link to them. And then we knew the local butcher that would then take those carcasses and cut it to what specification we wanted them to. Yeah. So it wasn't really hard to find the sort of local infrastructure to do it. Yeah. But that's us there in Cornwall. You can go to some areas in the north or up in Scotland where the local abattoir is hours away. And I think the rest of the England, there's lots of abattoirs shutting down all the time, local small ones, and that's really hurting farmers, and that has to change. That's to flip. We need more local abattoirs to help make that easier for people to do.
I think that's really interesting. And just last quick question for you. I think a lot of listeners might be wondering about the profitability. If you've read Dirt to Soil, one of Gabe's messages in that is that you farm for profit and not yield. And I was just curious, you're on your journey, but do you feel like you're more profitable now, or were you more profitable with your previous methods of farming?
No, 100% we're more profitable now. It's really interesting. There's another young lad who farms near me at home. He's going full high input. He's got a mixer wagon mixing up feed for his cattle that are indoors. He's got all these extra costs that when the fuel price hikes due to the wars in Ukraine, he's really feeling that crunch. But we literally just feel so resilient because we're not affected by fuel prices. We're not affected by fertilizer prices and all these other input prices. We're not affected by it. and it's so much less stress or burden on our mind day to day, because we're not worried about these things.
So you're basically in control of your input costs rather than having to rely on global
100%, yeah. And how much nicer is that to operate your business, you know?
Yeah.
We're really confident in what we're doing, and we are looking to scale up what we're doing because we feel it's profitable and want to make it a bigger part of our lives. So
I love that. Well said. So Jacob, coming on to you now. So Chipotle still, I guess, in its infancy over here in the UK, but in the US, a very big player in this market. You guys have been staunch supporters of the antibiotic-free movement in all your proteins. I've just finished reading your sustainability report, which is really interesting. One of the sections you talk about responsibly raised and responsibly sourced. And I was wondering when the other R word, which is regenerative, might start to play a role in your thinking going forwards.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I guess, it's very intriguing. We are very interested in learning more about the regen movement. And I think the simplicity of Chipotle gives us kind of a leg in because we're only using 53 ingredients in our restaurants. We don't have any freezers or microwaves. We get food orders 3 to 4 times a week. And about 25 years ago, we really realized that the quality eating of the fresh herbs and vegetables and the beef and pork shoulder in particular, when it was coming from sustainable sources, it was tasting better. The eating experience for our guests and our teams was far higher. So we really committed at that point to ensuring that the future success of our brand was not going to be at the detriment to farms and into communities. So I'm very interested in learning more and working with our teams both on the state side and here locally in the UK and Europe.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and just quickly follow up, how have you found things here in the UK compared to the US? I mean, you've personally done that transition a few years ago now, but in terms of sourcing ingredients, how's that been compared to in the US?
Yeah, I mean, in many respects, it's a lot easier just because you're not traveling as many miles to find great raw ingredients. It's been a little bit trickier because there's been some changes in Brexit, I think, has factored in when it comes to mainland and Western Europe and the UK. It's been really intriguing. I think some of our ingredients, we would not like to have to go as far as we have to find them and be able to meet a brand standard. But it's been really interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we're glad you're here, and thank you for putting all the work you do to improve the food that we're eating. It's great. So, Chris, coming on to you. I was curious to learn a bit more about chefs who are your customers. Do you feel like there would be a demand for products grown regeneratively? Like, how important is that for them? And what are the kind of meats that your chefs are looking for? What do they look for?
Well, the majority of our chefs that we're supplying are probably at the higher end of the market. So Michelin-starred chefs, 5-star hotels. Now, they're always looking for the best product. And one thing we always find if we take them to farms or to meet the farmers, it's very humbling for us at the other end of the job. This process is a long process. These farmers have these cattle for a lot longer than we have them. We may age them for 3 or 4 weeks in a chiller. But you guys have them for 30 months or sometimes longer. And it all starts really with what we're here today about, really, the soil, isn't it? That's the start of the whole process, and it's humbling for me to be here. But when I take these chefs to the farms, you can really see that they take a big interest in, one, where their meat is sourced, 2, the welfare of those animals. And I think this sits very closely on that same line, but it is all about education and getting them out in the kitchen to meet the farmers and to meet people like Ben who are doing it, in the correct way.
Yeah, good. I love that. Well, I think that kind of leads on to my next question, which is for you, Gabe. Which is, this comes from a dear friend of mine in Texas called Steph, who works for a regenerative lamb company. And she said, from a sales perspective, I run into a lot of decision makers at the retail level who think of regenerative as a marketing term. And despite presenting them with evidence and science, they still seem to think of regenerative as just that, a marketing term. How do you feel the meat industry as a whole can overcome obstacles of buyers being skeptical, despite producers like Ben doing all the right things to validate their claims of regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, and great question. And I think you use it as a tool. By that I mean, what does the consumer want? Okay, what does the retailer want? The retailer wants a consistent supply of high quality product at a price point that is beneficial to them. The consumer wants a consistent supply of high quality product, right? And they want to hear the story. Okay, so it's the story of the farms and ranches and how it's being produced. The farmer and rancher needs to go regenerative in order to save dollars, give them that resiliency that Ben talked about, okay? Which is one of the reasons we started Regenified, is to validate what farmers and ranchers are doing, then bring that validation through the supply chain, educating not only the retail end, but then the consumers. It ties everything together. And that, in that way, we can move regenerative practices forward for the betterment of the whole supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Claire, coming on to you, 6 inches of soil. I was also thinking about, I think in Gabe's book, you write about the hardest 6 inches is between the ears of all the farmers out there. Your film's obviously done really well, well, you and Colin and the whole team that put it together. What do you think is next as to how we change the way people think about food?
As in a project that will follow on? Are we thinking the next, or within, well, first of all now, we are taking the film on a little journey. We made the film for impact right from the word go. When we went to a film festival, they were quite fascinated that impact was high on our agenda even before finishing the film, because we wanted to have these important discussions we're having now. So when we show the film, there's normally a call to have a panel discussion with a Q&A, and that brings the film to life. So all the time you watch a film like this or other films that are out there, there are questions asked, and that has been incredible. So we're doing that right now, and that's in schools, universities, big companies. So we're going into places like Compass, Valley. We went to Savills the other day. So it's all the different, from the landowners, land managers, right up to the top big food companies. So that's amazing. And then really importantly for us is to have at community level that connection on a farm. So we made the film so people could come onto farms, understand the supply chain. We have butchers in it. We have the whole spectrum. So you can really reconnect with food, farming and nature in it. And so that's been a really big thing. Out of the film and the book and the journey and meetings from the last 3.5 years, phenomenally connecting with people like Ben and our other amazing farmers in the film, we've got a real bug for it. So Colin and I are now exploring other things, and I think Gabe and I were discussing earlier, and we have obviously just alluded to it, Gabe has, about nutrient density, and there are other ways of, the big thing that keeps coming up to us, people keep saying, well, how about the accessibility of this food? So at the moment we're talking about price points or access or not enough, or who is regen, who's not, and how do we understand it with Gabe's work with Regenified certification. All of that could make another film and discussion here in the UK. But in the UK people are desperate to know and to understand it. Our film seems to be helping them vaguely understand what regenerative farming is, and then I think there's more work to be done. At least they're being introduced to it, and we are really pushing it. As we were having a discussion earlier, it's not just about one principle, whether that's half the time it's because people are not ploughing anymore, but it's going to that whole regeneration discussion. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I love that. Well, now I've got a question from some friends of mine in Austin, Texas, Taylor and Katie, and they would like to know, what do you guys all eat? How good are you at taking care of your personal ecosystems, bearing in mind that, you're some of the leading land managers and restaurateurs and suppliers in that space? She commented that she felt there was a huge disconnect in this space, that they, kind of similar to Gabe, have traveled to some of the best land managers in the world, and they often see very industrialized ingredients in the pantries of those same managers, ketchups and things like that, which maybe come from a different production system than the one that we're all trying to engage everybody with. So I guess start with you, Gabe. What's in your pantry, Gabe?
Yeah. So what is in our pantry at home is mainly what we grow and raise. And if you go look back to my hotel room, look in the suitcase, there may be some items that were smuggled across into customs that were not, I didn't profess that I had with me. So I'm on the road 275 plus days a year. I pretty much carry my food with me almost all the time. Yeah, I don't eat out a whole lot simply because once you've grown your own food and tasted it and are used to that, know where it comes from, that's what I feel best eating.
Yeah, I love that. What are some of the things as well?
Can you give us
Yeah, there's some beef in there because I didn't know if I'd get to Ben's, and then there's some home raised product. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. How about you, Jacob? Tell us about your pantry and your food habits.
Well, I kind of get the best of both worlds. So I get a great pantry at home, and it's primarily filled with a lot of fresh vegetables that we get delivered once a week, and then shopping twice a week, and then I get to eat Chipotle, usually 5 days a week. So, and I really mix it up. I'll have a salad one day, a burrito one day, cook at home every meal except for my working meal when I'm out in the field visiting our restaurants or working out of our office in central London.
Yeah, what kind of things do you have in your vegetable patch? Here in London, right, to be clear, like you live in the city, so you've...
Yeah, so I partner with a local outfit called Riverford, and they deliver it every Friday, and it's all seasonal. So, asparagus is just coming into season right now, and that's one of the things I appreciate is that it's just going through each season here, which we get we get in abundance.
Yeah, I love that.
I think that's crucial, though. Gabe, I'm going to have to argue with you here, mate. I'm probably a bit biased. I think we've got the best product in the world in this country, but it is very important that you eat it at the right time and you eat it locally. We've got the best, fish around the, on the coast of the UK. Asparagus, strawberries, but they've got to be eaten at the right time. And if you don't do that, and this is big pressure on, I think, on the farming industry here, that we've got sometimes a tail wags the dog, and they want it on the shelves 12 months of the year, and it's just not possible, is it? So I think you've got to fill your pantry with, seasonal stuff, new season lamb when it's new season, not, asparagus in November, because, they're invariably flown in from Chile.
So how about you, Ben? What's in your cupboard, your pantry cupboard, your larder at home? What have you got?
I have to make a bit of a confession. It's probably not as pure as it should be, but we do. So all the meat that we produce at home, so beef, pork is ours. Eggs, we produce our own eggs, but we buy the rest of our meat from Piper's Farm, one of the online butchers that we supply to. So that's great. And then veg we actually get from Riverford, so seasonal organic veg box. That's the majority of our pantry, but we've got definitely room for improvement. There's some stuff in there that's like cereals or crisps and things like that isn't great, is it? But
they're called treats, aren't they?
Yeah, we've got it, and perhaps that's the trick that is the key, because a lot of people can't just produce. A lot of people can't eat what they produce from their farm. It's just a balance, isn't it, I guess? And that's we're trying the main ingredients to our meal are, these sort of locally produced or organic, I guess, with the veg, because I think that's a big one. The rest of it kind of is not so great. But as long as those main key ingredients, I guess, are...
Yeah.
That's what's important to us.
And how about you, Claire?
Well, I'm probably like Ben. I've got kids, so there's a mixture of joy going on there. But the one thing I love, especially now, is I get to work when I can once a week with Adrienne, market gardener. So when I work there in exchange, I get given veg, and that is pretty phenomenal because her veg is supreme. So that's in Cambridgeshire. And we don't have many local growers in Cambridgeshire, especially not her calibre. She's just been certified organic. She's looks after her soil beautifully. We're now seeing 2 years of her doing it. The soil has totally changed, so I know that the nutrient density has probably gone up as well. So that's a pretty unique experience. So, yeah, but I'm like these guys. It's the basics are from as good a source as I can get, unless I'm tired, knackered, and it's from wherever it falls.
I just got to add one more thing. So this is how anal, so to speak, I am about how healthy soil equates to nutrient-dense food. So even the bourbon that I consume is certified regenerative, and all the grains going into that bourbon are certified regenerative.
So how many bottles do you bring over?
Where are they now?
I happen to have about a couple hundred bottles in my garage, so yeah.
I was sent some regen gin the other day.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
So we've also got with us Salar. Well, do you want to quickly say who you are?
I'm Salar Shamirani. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Regenerative. My question is to Chris, and that is, we often find ourselves a lot of, I don't want to say barriers, but middle players that are involved in the supply chain between a farm and an ultimate shelf or, a retailer. What do you see your role as an agent and enabler to activate a supply chain that is based on identity preservation, which a lot of it happens in the UK. But if you are to essentially transition the current supply chain to more of a regenerative supply chain, where do you see some of these challenges to be? Is it from your sourcing strategy? Is it from your segregation and separation strategy? Is it from the demand that you need to have from the buyers?
I think you've got to start at the beginning, and I think the farmers, you've got to get on board from our point of view. If you know that the cattle are being reared in the right way, are being killed to the right grade, and the quality of the product speaks for itself then. And that's ultimately in our business. The chefs have got to be confident when that plate leaves the kitchen, and it's the same for you in your business. And when my butcher's cut the meat and it leaves our factory, it's got to be the best product on the street, and it's got to be something that that is there 52 weeks a year. So, we do a lot of hotels that will be doing quite big numbers for banquets. They need that to be the absolute same specification for every portion that leaves that kitchen. So if it's a dinner for 600, these chefs are wanting the best product they can get their hands on, and if that, as a wholesaler or as a butcher, you can buy them into this. They're there if the quality of the product it fits the bill, and if that does, and the specs right, that they buy in very quickly into it. And like I said at the start, it's a long process, but it starts really with the soil even before the animal goes on it. So it's getting really back to getting products that are tasty, that have flavour, and I think we've lost a lot of that. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a professor, and I'm not a farmer, but I do know that a lot of the food that are on these shelves, there's no flavour or taste in any of them. So if we can get back, and this regeneration of our farming system and our soil can achieve that, your chefs and your consumers, they'll pile into it, because that's what everybody wants, but that's the ultimate end goal.
So there's definitely a movement out there right now, kind of in conjunction with regenerative food, in the meat world, that we should be eating less meat but better quality. And I was curious what your views were on this question, maybe starting with you, Gabe.
Okay, great question, and one we often get asked. So I would answer it this way. I think the amount of meat that a person consumes should be up to them. Okay, it's up to them to determine less or more. One thing, though, that we cannot do is have less grazing ruminants on the landscape. It's very, very important to understand that your soil health and the degradation of that soil happens directly coincides with the removal of grazing animals from the landscape. So you can say you want to eat less meat, that's up to the individual to determine. But if we don't have grazing ruminants on the landscape, the degradation that's occurring worldwide is going to increase at an ever alarming rate. And this is proven over eons of time. Look at all of the rich, deep topsoil all over the world. Where is that? Where was it formed? How was it formed? And all of it was formed by grazing ruminants on the landscape. Removing animals from the landscape is the worst thing we could do for climate change, because we're going to put more carbon into the atmosphere and not put it back into the soil where it belongs.
Agreed. I strongly agree with that, obviously. But what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, 100% agree. And to build on it a bit more is that, you don't want to be eating less of the meat that's produced in the way that we're trying to do, me and Gabe. We need to be eating less industrially reared chicken and pork, really intensively farmed stuff. We need to reduce that, yes, but eat a lot better. But I don't think you need to reduce overall amount. If you reduce the lower quality stuff, but replaced with better quality, then we're going to see biodiversity in our landscape sustained and improved. Because it's not just the climate crisis, it's the nature crisis as well. Biodiversity loss is massive, and taking farmed animals out of our landscape, I think, will be really just.
Yeah, I just want to expand just for a moment, if I might.
Sure.
You look at North America, okay? There was, historically speaking, they believe there was more ruminants grazing the North American continent pre-European settlement than there are on the North American continent today. So if grazing animals were the problem, why wasn't it a problem back then?
Well, I was just wanting to add that the other thing, as in follow-up to Ben, the intensive farming that happens with animals at the moment is because they're fed on grains that are, farmed on the land. So it's bad land use. And that's what a lot of this comes back to. So if you rejig it, and as Gabe and Ben are saying, and we've actually got proper grazed animals and proper pastures and diverse pastures, not just monoculture ryegrass, then again we're going to be eating much better food. At the moment, if we're eating a chicken or a pig, particularly in this country, that comes from intensively fed grains that have grown in monoculture, highly sprayed manner, then we are taking in some terrible things plus antibiotics. So those are the problems that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree. And how about you, Jacob? I mean, you're feeding thousands of people every day.
Yeah. I mean, I think Chipotle is serving over 1 million people every single day. And, when a customer walks in the front door of our restaurants, like Gabe said, we don't want to dictate what they're going to eat. We're going to offer them vegetarian. We've got an organic, vegan braised tofu. We also have a lot of meat. We've got pork shoulder. We've got a braised beef. We've got steak, which is flash grilled. We've got chicken thighs. And we're going to make sure that those customers that want to eat meat will be eating the highest quality meat and putting an enormous amount of emphasis on the animal welfare and the ethical sourcing behind that. And so we're not going to be linked with, to your point, any sort of like industrial farming. That's not going to be good for our soil and in future generations.
Yeah, pretty exciting to think about what Gabe mentioned before about nutrient density, that the soils from farms like Ben's can translate into meat that is going to be more nutritious than maybe the meat you're currently serving, which is already at a really good level. That's a pretty exciting prospect.
Absolutely.
And what about you, Chris? What do you think in the chef world in terms of less meat, better quality?
I do think that there may have been a slight shift away from the consumer, away from meat. You can see it a lot more in menus now. There's less protein in the menu, whether that's because of food costs. Chefs are always looking at their costings, and sometimes there's not much content in some of these menus. You can go into these restaurants, there's very small portions, there's not much protein on the menu, like I said. But instead of maybe 3 options of meat on a menu now, you might only get 1, just because they're trying to cater for all. But make sure that one is the best that it can be, and make sure it's exactly reared in the correct way, in the correct manner, slaughtered in the correct manner, and it's aged and it's on that plate and it's cooked the right way. And that's the only way you can really, we've all got responsibility to do that, whether you're the farmer, the butcher, the chef, or the person who's paying the bill at the end of the night, who's having the meal. I think we've all got responsibility to do the best job we can.
Yeah, I agree, and I think one of the biggest challenges is to kind of demystify this whole process and really form more of a connection between the Bens of this world and the people coming to
consume meat in Chipotle or any of your restaurants. And I think now it's easier than ever to learn about how food is produced. And thanks to 6 Inches of Soil and Gabe's Dirt to Soil book, I think these are all really important ways to open up the industry to be fully transparent so that people can understand and make better choices from the supermarket, from the restaurant, to support the kind of agriculture that you want to support, to make a world that you want for your children. Most of us around this table are parents, and congrats to you, Ben, by the way. How old is Ted?
10 weeks old.
10 weeks old. Next generation coming through. But it's gonna, and I think you'll probably find this as a new dad, you start to think more. I've got 2 children back home, and I really want to live in a world where they're going to flourish and prosper, and this is a way that we can combat climate change. Like, there's now unarguable evidence that that's true. And so I guess to end, just thank you to all of you for all of your hard work in this space, for really pushing this movement forwards.
Well done. You made it. You listened to the whole episode. Thank you so much to everybody who made this possible. It was a unique in-person recording. We had Gabe flown over, especially from Bismarck, North Dakota, all the way to North London. Thanks to Salar, CEO of Regenerative, for helping me make that happen. Claire and Colin drove down from Cambridge. We had Ben with his brand new baby and wife journey up on the trains on a bank holiday Monday. Awesome effort from you. Chris, thank you for coming along, your podcast debut. Big moment in anyone's lives. And Jacob, thank you so much for coming over from East London. It was a wonderful gathering of friends and experts, and I think we discussed some really interesting topics. But we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to hear what you would like to learn more about in the regenerative world, whether it's vegetables, crops, forestry, potatoes. Nothing is out of bounds. Let us know what you want to learn about. We do have access to some pretty awesome people in the food supply world, farmers, processors, chefs, and we'd like to get your questions across to them. So please get in touch with the usual 6 Inches of Soil, Instagram, Facebook, and we will drop into the show notes businesses that were mentioned as answers to some of the questions. So for now, thank you very much, and we will see you next time.